Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you again to the Organ House Concert and Seminar Series. We are happy to have you here again for this outing and this conversation. So today, we are moving towards another direction in this conversation. I will announce the focus shortly, but before that, I'd like to welcome you and to just introduce you. So, I mean, some of us who have not, perhaps this is your first time to, joining us on this journey of Organ House Concert and Seminar Series. So the Organ House Concert and Seminar Series is a space or a scholarly hub for academic discourse, artistic and performance exploration that aims to curate the current practice of music studies, scholarship, performance, and initiative within African musicology. Here at Mountaintop University, we are interested in creating a space where scholars can engage freely and also to experiment with ideas. So our aim is to open this layer of scholars across demography. It could be from anywhere, but the major aim is engagement. And in so doing, pushing the boundaries or creating or relocating the scholarly discourse in contemporary Africa, or we can say Black diaspora. So today I have with me two colleagues, friends, and scholars who are also practitioners of music, So the first person we have Alaba. Shortly, Alaba will introduce himself fully, and also we have Joshua Brew. But before that, I would like to thank the management and the management board and the administration of the administrative process and the management, the structure of Mountaintop University. First of all, the person of the Vice Chancellor, the person of Professor Elijah Ayorinde, and of course, the HOD of Music Department, Mountaintop University, person of Dr. Bayo Ogunyemi. Thanks so much for providing this context for us and this opportunity for us to explore. So back to the business of the day. I'd like to briefly introduce our presenters today, but I'm going to allow them to do that. I think it's like, so I'm going to allow them just introduce a short word because today's presentation is quite different compared to what we've had initially. So we have scholars, we have practitioners who are also engaged in professional and public facing work, or what we call community work in music, in musicology or music studies. So the structure for today is more like open. So we are all hosts, we are all presenters. The idea is to create a platform for discussion, to enrich these ideas of community work or professional or alternative musicology, if we can say. So I'm going to just pass the baton around to hear from Alaba, then Joshua. So Alaba, over to you.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here. Thank you, Dr. Ayorinde, for the invitation. Thanks to the administration of the Mountaintop University and the HOD of the music department. Thanks for having us. My name is Alaba Ilesanmi. I'm a PhD candidate at Florida State University. Generally, I'm interested in how people make music. I'm interested in why it's important that they make music. And broadly, my research focuses on African and African diasporic cultures, tracing the ongoing dialogue between these cultures. More broadly, I focus on these cultures as global Black cultures. So I think that would do for my introduction. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alaba. Joshua, and over to you.
Hi, everyone, and it's great to be here. And thanks, my colleagues and senior colleague, Dr. Ayorinde and Alaba for inviting me. I'm Josh Brew, a PhD candidate at the University of Pittsburgh, focusing on ethnomusicology and African studies as my primary area. My research area is mainly on music and sustainability, and I look at it in terms of musicians making music, sustaining music, and also music as a tool for sustaining the environment. And as we're going to talk about today, my research interest is not only based on just writing. I'm also interested in applying my research and to benefit musicians and the community I research in. And I'm also a performer. I play the guitar, I play the piano in most of the African popular music style. I don't really do choral. Yeah, so that's a bit about me.
Thank you so much. So straight to the point and the business of the day. So I'm just going to provide a kind of more like a background again to remind us why we are here. Then we are going to open the conversation, and we have our scholars to engage in one way or the other through their own works, their own, like I said, like I earlier mentioned, this is not a strict academic, platform or presentation per se. This is a dialogue. It's a dialogue. Yeah. So then the question is, like we all know, musicology has, a long-standing dynamics in terms of its structure, its framework, how it is framed for different community across the world, and how it also embodied a kind of global let's go a century over, let's say, at least 150 years ago, people have been engaging musicology in different ways. And the field itself has developed across, era, and people have, responded to the dynamics of the field in different ways, with, like, for some of us who the music scholars here, we know about the paradigms of music studies, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. So this epoch or eras responded to the context of the time. But the question is, what is the context of today? And what is the place of music studies or music scholarship, or we say musicology or ethnomusicology in this context? This is the context of today. The role of music studies, ethnomusicology, and let's say general music education or music studies. The role of these layers, multiple layers, of identities of music studies, of music scholarship in contemporary time, in terms of socio-economic, religious, political, the shifting dynamics of today's world. So that is the focus of today. And to start that, I am going to propose or share or pose a general question. So then the question is, beyond music performance, education, and performance in church, I would say church music, what else can music achieve in today's society? That is the first question. And that could also serve as the underlying or driving question for this dialogue today. So I'm going to say that again. I'm going to say it very, very soon so you can get and key into the process. Beyond music performance, or say beyond performance, education, and church, what else can music achieve in today's society? So that is our underlying question. And by extension, towards engaging that question, I am going to invite our presenters, our colleagues, to just share a brief background about their own approach to this idea, what we call public musicology or public-facing work in musicology or community music. So I'm going to invite us, open it to the table again. So the question is, what is musicology? What is public musicology? What is community music? And what is public-facing work? So that is the first point.
Okay. Josh, I guess I'm going first. Uh, I mean, those two questions are very loaded. But I'll try my best to answer both. Let's start with, beyond performance, education, church. What else can music achieve in the society? I guess I might also edit that question and say, what else might music scholarship achieve in the society? Um, I mean, as someone who was born and raised in Nigeria, I can say that music is underutilized in our society in Nigeria. Mostly everyone who studies music, you either go into teaching or you do performance or you end up as a church organist. But there's much more to music, and that's the that's the beauty of that question. There's so much more that we can do in music in very developed societies. Music is used for health and wellness. Um, People actually pursue a degree in music therapy and they get a license, and they work alongside doctors, nurses, and medical practitioners. Music also through music we can actually preserve and understand our cultural heritage. Music is used for advocacy and activism. Music is also, or music can facilitate cognitive development and learning. So that will be my response to the first part of that question. And to the second one, what is applied musicology or applied ethnomusicology? Let it be on the record that I do not refer to myself as an ethnomusicologist. But if people call me that, that's fine. But what is applied musicology and public facing work? Um, I think for me, applied musicology is putting music to use, to practical use, in various contexts. Um, in other words, applied musicology is the practical application of music to advancing social, cultural, economic, and political causes for public interest and good. Um, but that's a general definition. So for me, on the one end, I see musicology as theory, and I see applied musicology as practice. So it's a way of bridging the gap between theory and practice.
Wow, interesting. Okay. Thank you so much, Alaba, for that insightful response. Can we just move to Josh? Then I will definitely respond, of course. Yeah. So, Josh, can we have you?
All right, sure. So music beyond what is normally perceived to be. I think music mirrors society, or it's a mirror of society, because whatever you hear in music is from society, and sometimes whatever is said in music goes on to prophesy what happens in society. So beyond just theorizing, writing about it, using it as part of our religious activities, we need to really pay attention to our music, because as I'll talk about today, most of the environmental issues which we ignore, and in the other case studies that my fellow colleagues will present on, are embedded in the music. So for me, music is a reflection of society, talking about the past, the present, and it prophesies in the future. And when it comes to applied musicology, ethnomusicology, whatever logy, or in music studies, I'm a firm believer of music moving beyond just the scholarly aspects, that's the research and of course teaching, which are all considered to be practical. But for me, the applied or the community facing bit is using the music to solve actual real world problems. So most often music scholars, we theorize about music and represent the situation. But for me, it becomes applied or community facing when it is solving real world problems. That is how I perceive applied bit. So if you do the research and if you come out with findings and you present it, going back to actually solve problems for me is applied bit, because teaching and researching are all practical. So that is where I stand. I hope I answered the question.
Well, I think it's thanks so much. It makes sense to me. Yeah, let me put it that way. Yeah, thanks so much. Just briefly, from my own perspective, to start with, I don't see any music discourse or approach as theory. Yeah, they are theory, but what is theory in the first sense? Theory are things that they are practical, they are things that happen, they are histories, they are practical things that once happened that has shaped people's consciousness in one way or the other, and people have documented it. Because it is documented, it is reproducible. On that note, it is not theory. Although its practicality is based on mediation. When people mediate, for instance, in musicology, we have what we call historical performance. People see play as if, they dress as if, the same way people play in Baroque era, 16th century. So these are forms of mediation. So for me, when we do harmony, theory, analysis, they are practical because people mediate. When people learn chord 4 to 5, they learn those changes and rhythmic changes. And they practice, they interpret, it shapes how they behave in one way or the other. It could be on organ, it could be on piano, it could be on piano, it could be on any instrument. The reality is that that information, theory in quotes, shape their practical ideas. So that is on one point. But to now come to our earlier question, which is about what, why are we doing this? What is community music? What is public facing work? Well, I am not interested in defining what, because I don't think we might not have the same definition, but I'm just going to instead put forward another layer, perhaps in addition to what Alaba has said or what Josh just said. So and that would be for me in a question format. I want to ask question. The question then is, what is the relevance of music studies to the everyday life in Africa, for instance? Apart from, okay, I will just talk about performance and theory, whatever. So then the point is that apart from this artistic layer, what is that the end of music studies? That would be my own point. Is the performance, application of harmony, reproduction of theory, is education and, whatever, history. The question for me is, would that be the end and everything about music studies or basic understanding of music? That would be my own question. And to public-facing work I see as, as something like the way we define it, beyond the academic discourse, taking the knowledge or mediating a certain form idea, certain forms of, dynamics in society with music knowledge. What that knowledge is, perhaps is what we are discussing today. And what are the cases of this kind of knowledge? What type of knowledge constitutes or can shape community or contribute to the society in terms of from the musical perspective? That is why we are here today. So from that, I hope that explains or justify your explanations, Alaba and Joshua. So is there any, if you have anything to say, fine, please, you can do. But the second question, then I will just let me know. What do you think?
I would like to just follow up briefly on that. I mean, on the one hand, I agree with you that scholarship is practical. On the other hand, I would disagree.
Okay.
On the end that I agreed, I mean, in the real sense of it, it is practical. But the reality is that the people that we write about, that we most times represent in our writing, don't really engage with those scholarship. Um, and in that sense, then the practicality of it becomes, theoretical jargons. Um, so you are correct, but in terms of reality, and I think that's why we're also here talking about applied musicology. It's to now bring that, what seems theoretical, to bringing it into practical use, and to use the term that just Josh used, to solving real life problem while studying, secondary dominant and whatever can be practical to the student who is studying it. To a lay person in the society, they're careless whether a T resolves to do or goes to saw or whatever. So now where, to balance that, I mean, how do we now apply, music studies in the society in a way that it benefits a layman, in a way that it solves real life problem, whether it's cultural problem, political, or whatnot. That's the purpose of applied musicology. So what seems theoretical then becomes, something that is practical, that a lay person can relate to.
Wow, that's great. That's great. Oh, I agree with you, of course. I agree with you. But the point is, everything for me, everything is a process and incomplete. So on that basis, I agree with you that I think I'll put it in that process. Let's put it there. Then perhaps when we're talking about the case studies from South Africa, from Ghana, from Nigeria, then we can now come back to this particular. But while we are waiting for that time, I have another layers of question. One for you, for every one of us anyway, just put it on the table again. The question is then, why do we then get into this type of scholarship that aims to go beyond the lay down foundation, understanding of music studies? Why are we doing this kind of work? What is the motivation? And why do we tend to, why is it so important for us to do this kind of scholarship in contemporary times, particularly in Africa?
Perhaps I'll take this. And for me, I'll try to focus my responses to my research, which we are talking about today. Because while music, when it comes to environmental issues, and I want to use this opportunity to acknowledge Professor Olusegun Titus, who has really influenced my interest in music and environmental sustainability. So while music can talk about, or we use music to sing about environmental issues, political issues. For environmental issues to be specific, music is part of the problem, and I'll talk about that in my research. Because if it is political issues in Nigeria and SARS, and musicians are not singing about it, it is part of the problem. If it's about social injustice and musicians are not addressing issues, it's part of the problem. And in my area of ecological issues, music is part of the problem when the materials we use for music is solely from nature, and there are environmental degradation and we don't pay attention to it. And if there are environmental issues and musicians are not singing about it, music is part of the problem. So instead of just focusing on the benefits we get from music, we use it for our worship. Yes, it draws us closer to God. We use it for entertainment. We have fun. How about using music to address real life issues? So there is an ethical orientation when it comes to music beyond just the enjoyment. That is when it becomes important to move beyond the various interests we get from music and now focus on how to use it to address real world problems. So for me, it is important because music is part of all the problems we have in this world. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Okay, let's hear from Alaba and let's see what Alaba thinks about this.
So in my own case, I'm not solving environmental problem. But what actually motivates me is what I'll probably refer to as, cultural crisis. Whether we agree, I mean, I think we all would agree that anyone born or who lives in the, African post-colony is faced with, this identity crisis, of choosing what is native, what is foreign, deciding what is indigenous and what is not. Navigating that terrains of being, going back to last week's presentation, navigating being a cosmopolitan, citizen, Afroponitanism and all that. So it's that motivation that got me into the work that we're doing with what I'll be presenting today, the African Art Music Commissioning Project. And part of the reason why we've been unable to truly define what African art music is, or as some folks would say, art music in Africa, goes back fundamentally to that cultural identity crisis. Because on the one end, school of thought believes that you should not use the piano because the piano is Western instrument. On the other end, another school of thought believes that you can make the piano behave like an African instrument. So these are the kinds of dialogues that we're having in African art music that actually prompted me to collaborate, and also be on the Akojobos project, so that we can mediate the gap between the several scholarship, written on African art music, and actually practicalizing, and then creating a platform where we can agenda proper discussion and practicalities towards maybe solving this problem, or maybe not actually solving it, but seeing what is possible, trying out various possibilities. That is my own motivation.
Thank you so much. Well, again, I agree with you. But in fact, this is not even a case of agreement or no agreement. It's a fundamental, issue that we all come to this. We mount the table, or we mount the podium with different approach to the same fundamental issue. And I think I agree with both of you again, in the sense that we are all mediating a crisis in process, or to borrow a term from one of my two sociologists and anthropologists that I've been reading in the last few years, or Ebenezer Obadare and Wale Adebanwe. So they have been focusing on the post-colonial African, politics, development, and they came with one interesting phrase, which I have been thinking about at least since 2017. So they concluded that African problem is a product of crisis of rule. Crisis of rule. And from what both of you just explained right now, I can see that clearly. Yeah, crisis of rule, problem of leadership, policy. And by this, I'm not talking about government alone. This sheds across, stratas of the society. So from my own end, it's similar. It's similar. The response is simply to, okay, how do we use music to mediate everyday life? What is the role of music? Performance is there, people perform, but from my own background, in Nigeria context, Lagos, Nigeria, where I started my own career, the idea of music as a basic, it has a definitive, approach. When you talk about music, people instantly understand what you're talking about, and they know how to fit you in that box. Okay, this is a musician. It's a musician, he plays in church, he plays in club, and that's all for them. So they remember you when they want to enjoy, when it's time for merriment. When it's time for church, that's when you are more relevant. But the moment after that service, you are back to your corner. So they only remember you when there's need for, merriment, concert or whatever. But beyond those moments, the relevance is vague. It's obscure. The person of that musician, the identity of that music, to borrow a term from Alaba, becomes obscure. It's irrelevant to everyday life anymore. The next time it's relevant is when they need to enjoy, when they need to do the concert, when the church service does it. So then the question to me is, okay, is this sustainable? This idea of music that we are portraying is not sustainable in the sense that we can't just live on temporality, in this kind of temporality. It's not going perhaps to, So hence my own approach to scholarship, which is quite different to what people might define as music scholarship, because I take a kind of definitive turn to rather embrace multidisciplinary approach to music studies. Sometimes I wear the cap of musicology. Sometimes I wear the cap of an anthropology. Sometimes I wear the cap of a pianist. Sometimes of a performer. Sometimes as a teacher. It depends where the cap fits based on the condition at hand. And sometimes also I wear the cap of somebody working in the community, and that's what we are discussing today through my own layers of scholarship. So that is it. I think we are saying the same thing. We are pointing towards the same dynamic. It's about the crisis of rule in post-colonial Africa. And the question of music in this process is vital, which is a key focus today. So why discussing this? I think the next thing we might, or in case you have any other point, Joshua or Alaba, what do you think? You might have a follow-up, perhaps you want to respond to what I just said.
Yeah, we are lagging behind on time, but I'll quickly just reemphasize the last point that you make about wearing several hats. I think any serious musicologist is not just someone who writes about music. Sometimes you become, you have to, function in different roles. It's just impossible to, retrieve or restrict yourself to just writing. I guess I'll just rephrase and say that the best scholarships or the best scholars who write good scholarship are people who put on different arts, people who function in several roles. That makes the scholarship very organic and persuasive, as well as it places the scholarship in such a way that you are actually one way or the other solving problems. So just being a scholar is not just when you write, it's also when you do other things, the other things that comes with scholarship.
Yeah, I'll add a few words based off on what you said, Dr. Ayorinde, in terms of musicians and music careers and their sustainability. And it was of interest to me because that was my entry point into this whole idea of applied work. After I completed my undergraduate in music, then I had to go into the field, become a musician. And I became exposed to these challenges of being a musician in Ghana at an early stage, because historically in Ghana, and I know perhaps in Nigeria, the music career is seen as a hobby. People have refused to do actual jobs. So it drew my interest into researching this idea of music sustainability, and it directed my master's thesis. And I coined the idea of music career sustainability, fixing it on the idea of sustainability, which mostly talk about sustaining endangered music and of course, protecting the environment. And I was able to, publish this as an article in the Ethnomusicology Forum. I think, Dr. Ayorinde, we have an article in that same issue. And, publishing that article or writing, I realized it was not enough, because like we've already established, it was for our colleagues in the academia who read it. Oh, Josh, this is a good article. But the people who are experiencing the real world issue of music career, we're not getting access. So the first thing I did was to apply these findings from my research. So that was when I started working with LPB to organize workshop, invite, of course, scholars and industry personnel to talk about these strategies of having a sustainable music career. And for me, it was beneficial because I was able to translate my academic writings into layman language for them to actually relate to it. Oh, so this is what you did in your thesis. Oh, this is it. Yes, I did the field work, which is practical, but then they're actually benefiting from these findings. For me, was fulfillment, and that is what I say is the applied bits. So I in relation to how music can solve real world problem, is actually putting our findings from whatever research we do to actually solve or make the music or the research more beneficial to people who do not read our jargons and theoretical frameworks.
That's great, and that's quite deep and insightful. Thank you so much. Alaba, do you want to? Okay, thank you so much. So I think what we need to do now is to go around again and see what we are working on, perhaps different cases we have discussed earlier, we have mentioned. So let's see them, let's see how, take us through your cases and see, for people, for us also to see how we can start making sense from this idea of sustainability, perhaps, or community music in public engagement, or what we call public facing work. How does this work, for us to start thinking or redefining these layers of terms of reference, like community music, public facing musicology, or even public musicology, like they put it in the mainstream language, So let's have 10, 15 minutes each individually to just present and explore our ongoing work and see how, let's see the meeting point, in regards to what we've been discussing. So how do we go? Alaba, Brew, how do we go?
Yeah, I'll go.
Okay, that's how Alaba. Thank you so much, Alaba.
Okay, so do you see my screen?
Yes, clear.
So, okay, so my own public-facing work is with Akojopo, which I believe most of us here are aware of. Akojopo is an NGO organization registered in the US, also registered in Nigeria. I cannot at this time share the vision or mission of Akojopo with you because Akojopo is going through revamping and restructuring. But generally, what Akojopo does is to, advocate for African musicians, advocating for, more inclusiveness, especially in Western spaces. Akojopo is also promoting African ingenuity. Akojopo also provides mentoring and other educational programs across Nigeria. So, but the African Art Music Commissioning Project that I'll be talking about is one major initiative by Akojopo. And last year, it became the African Art Music Commissioning Project. In the 2 years prior to this, the first concert, perhaps African Art Music concert that Akojopo hosted was titled Iriajo. And then the second year, it became Orin Tutu. We are still keeping that Orin Tutu because it captures the entire vision of the program, which is to write new music. Only in translated to English might mean song, not necessarily music, but that also reflects, the idea, or perhaps what some scholars have pointed to, that there's perhaps no word for music in most African languages, but that does not mean that the idea of music is foreign to Africans. So Orin Tutu is to get new compositions, right? And like I said, this year it became the African Art Music Commissioning Project. So for the rest of my presentation, I'll try to answer 4 questions. And please let me know in about 6 minutes how I'm doing. I'll move very fast. So first, what is this initiative about? The African Art Music Commissioning Project. We are seeking to promote works that use Afrocentric compositional or theoretical framework, pieces that use African resources, processes, elements, um, sonic elements, structural elements, stylistic elements. We believe that this kind of structure we probably yield it's a different direction for African art music that we believe is needed, considering that some of the major crises we're dealing with is the identity crisis, which is also we perhaps all haven't reached a true definition of what African art music is. What would it look like? So for us, this is an exploration of what African art music might look like. Music that that use African or Afrocentric theoretical and compositional framework. But then, what again is that African framework? So this is a process for us, and we believe it is one that is needed. And as we go on, we'll see, the possible directions that this might take us to. We are also using this platform to celebrate African ingenuity, and also, again, mediate between scholarship and practice. Like I said, several works have been written on African art music. But actually practicalizing them is what Akojopo is diving into. Um, so that's the what. The why. The why. I think I have answered the why on the way, but we're basically um, filling the gap between theory and practice. But that's on one end. On the other end, um, some of the problems we have found is deals with the dissemination of compositions. There is not um, a platform where African art music is distributed. So that's the other layer of this African Art Music Commissioning project. Is Akojopo is starting a publishing initiative where we'll publish existing and new compositions and help composers sell their works. But it's the goal is not just for profit making, but the goal really is to have a platform where we can distribute music, where lovers of African art music can, find this composition. And when we talk about, inclusiveness in the academy, we have to make this music available. Now, if we make it available and then, um, Western music classrooms, if they if at that point they choose not to use it, the problem won't be that these compositions are not available. But now the claim usually is these compositions are inaccessible, and that persists till today. I mean, 2-3 days ago, a colleague was still sending a message on a platform asking, "Oh, whoa, if anyone has a composition by Ayo Bankole, we shouldn't have any issue with that by now. These works should be available on the platform, and that's part of what Akojoko is trying to solve. Um, but how are we doing this? I will focus this question on the African Art Music Commissioning Project initiative itself. Um, so we sent out a call for composition. 52 people, I believe, applied. We selected 10 people, and those 10 were engaged in workshops and seminars. We had 3 facilitators, Dr. Luranti, Dr. Luanga, Dr. Branco, who is in Uganda. Luanga is assistant professor of musicology at University of Michigan. So they engaged the participants in workshops and seminars. We shared reading materials with them, compositions. But the people that were selected, um, were folks from all over the globe. And I'll come back to that. But the workshop was to share ideas on what African structure, African compositional framework might look like, what African processes and resources, what they look like. And at the end of the day, the commissioned composers were tasked with composing works that are research oriented, that could be backed up. And I'll go to the next question. Am I doing good on time? And then the next question is for whom? And which comes back to what I talked about, with identity crisis. I think some of the challenges, most times, sometimes, we categorize works, any work written by an African, as African art music. But in most cases, these works are not even African in any way. So, I think we all agree that African art music is not composition written by an African. Far from it. We think it should be music that, use African resources, processes, element including sonic, structural, and stylistic. And in that case, if that is the case, as you know, that will be the case for Western music, where I have written a piece. If I play to you, you will think this is one of J.S. Bach's music. It's because I followed a particular structure. So when I write in Baroque style, or anyone does that, it's not because you are, or you were born in Germany or whatever. It's because you follow a particular style. And we believe that should be the same for African art music, where there's a structure, identifiable structure, style, and all of that. And in that case, if that is the case, then the music cannot be limited to Africans only. Anyone who is able to follow that structure should be able to write in that style. So we commissioned composers in Ghana, Nigeria, the United States, Brazil, Mexico. We had another composer from Poland who unfortunately was unable to meet up with the deadline. So 8 out of 10 composers met the deadline. Okay, so there's so much I could also unpack here, but I just need to move on. So here is a composition by one of the composers, Dr. Anderson from Brazil. And this is his own interpretation of African art music. And one of the ideas he got was on the syncretic nature of some African religions like Santeria, Voodoo in Brazil, how Catholicism has mixed with Ifa worship. So in this composition, he has composed this in that same style where is invoking African traditional religion, as well as making reference to Catholic style. So this composition is titled "The African Kyrie," and again, at Akojopo were interested in the possibilities embedded in African art music when we open it to global practitioners. So I'm going to play this composition, and this is, I would say, one Brazilian perspective on what African art music might sound like. So enjoy. So I'll speak slightly. I have to stop now. I will drop the link in the chat because we're doing very bad on time. I'll round up by saying that I have not written any scholarship on African art music because I don't think any other one is essential at this time. But rather, what I am doing with African art music is to push for the practice of what has been written about. There's a book on creative musicology. J.K. Nketia Akinwumi has written extensively on this as well. I think there's enough resources that we can tap from, but as opposed to writing more scholarship on African art music, we should rather, and I challenge everyone to do more practicalizing of this art form. And at that point, perhaps we can reach a standardized theory or framework for African art music. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks so much, Alaba. Thanks so much. Thanks. So definitely we'll get back to question time when we discuss how this particular project constitutes community music, or how it speaks to the idea or discourse around public-facing musicology or ethnomusicology or music studies. So quickly, let's move to Joshua Brew's project. Joshua, over to you.
All right, thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes. Yep.
And can you see my screen, my PowerPoint screen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so today I'm talking about Palmwine music and environmental sustainability in Ghana. And I'm focusing on the Legon Palmwine ban. So as part of what I believe in applied work, there's the collaborative bit where you involve the people who are actually in the society in which you work. So today I'm talking about the Legon Palmwine band. All right. So on my way from the US to Accra to complete the project I talked about initially about music career sustainability, I experienced a poignant revelation that remained with me throughout the time I was in Ghana last summer. So as my flight was landing in Accra, I saw from my airplane window deforestation along the riverbanks, especially at the estuaries where the river met the sea. The water I remember being clear was now very muddy. I completed my project, of course, but then the dreadful state of the environment stayed with me throughout. Like I couldn't stop thinking about it. And my preliminary research revealed that other parts of Ghana faces similar environmental issues, which is mainly caused by illegal mining of gold, which is also known in popular public discourse as galamsey, which is gathering and selling them. So after my project, I decided to dedicate my PhD dissertation to explore the relationship between music sustainability and environmental sustainability, because Legon Palmwine Band has been engaged in revitalizing the music. So what is Palmwine music? I know there is a Nigerian version of Palmwine music, but today I'm talking about the best Palmwine music. Ghana and Nigeria, our rivalry, it has to be represented everywhere. So today I'm talking about the best Palmwine music. So Ghanaian Palmwine music emerged along the coast of West Africa in the early 19th century through the fusion of guitar traditions and indigenous Ghanaian music. The music is a product of that transculturation that occurred between crew sailors and Ghanaian musicians. So local musicians were introduced to these foreign music styles, and they merged it with their music styles. With time, the music tradition moved inland from the coastal areas. It moved inland and it became associated with Insedasi. It is an Akan gathering of elders to talk about societal issues. And during those settings, they drink palm wine, sing, and talk about these issues. So palm wine music has evolved to become a unique music, distinctive Akan music tradition. Over the years, it has become foundational to popular music styles in Ghana and perhaps Nigeria, like high life. And I argue is the foundation or the grandparent of Afrobeats with the S. Since the late 1990s, however, the music tradition has been declining. partly due to new music bands that are coming up, and others like the Legon Palmwine band and Kwampa, who are actively trying to revitalize the music tradition. You know, I wanted to play a musical example, but I don't know if I have time. But let me play just a bit so that we have an idea of how Ghanaian Palmwine music sounds like. So this was how it started, with the music going on. The Palmwine is being tapped and brought to the center. All right. So like I said, with the music since the early 90s is declining, but now we have active contemporary Palmwine bands who are revitalizing the music. And the key component of Palmwine music for contemplation and discussion of societal issues is, I must say, is still prevalent, it's innate. But the environmental bit is not. So as Ghana, like the rest of the world, continue to face environmental problems, I use Palmwine music in collaboration with musicians as a tool for environmental sustainability. So one may ask, what is the relationship between Palmwine music and the environment? Ghanaian Palmwine music and the environment are deeply and meaningfully interconnected. As I previously mentioned, the music tradition started during social gatherings and that close proximity to nature. Additionally, there is the actual sharing of palm wine, which is from palm trees, hence the name Palmwine music. Third, the creation and performance of Palmwine music depend heavily on the natural environment, from the materials used to make instruments to the spaces where music is performed. There's that connection. So there's a meaningful relationship between music and Palmwine music and the natural environment. Moreover, Palmwine music is performed in a storytelling mode infused with Ghanaian philosophies and values. And the style compels its audience to be attentive and contemplative. So in Ghana, we have the proverb that while we drink, we contemplate for Palmwine music. So Palmwine music is a time to drink and think about issues. And I contend that environmental issues is something we should include. So this efficacy of Palmwine music, I suggest, makes it capable of invoking nostalgia, an effective approach for using music to support environmental movements. So the music tradition therefore becomes a productive lens to look at the relationship between music and environmental degradation. So if the music is there, what is the environmental ramification? So while materials necessary for making music, such as instruments, are readily available for purchase, we often care little about where they are from or where they end up. And I contend that there's a need to understand the material that enable our music making and their implication on the natural environments. And like I said earlier on, I always argue that music is part of the global ecological crisis. Let's consider this in Ghanaian Palmwine music. So during my time in Ghana last summer, I observed the use of plastic cups and bottles to serve palm wine music during performances. Plastic, however, have been identified as a major contributor to waste management problems in Accra. Plastic choke gutters, and they cause flooding, which destroys properties and causes the death of humans and animals. And ironically, the older generation of palm wine music practitioners serve palm wine in half-gourd calabashes, which are environmentally friendly and reusable. More importantly, calabash usage corroborate the relationship between music and the natural environment. The ubiquitous contemporary preference for plastic, however, is due to the inaccessibility of calabash and the associated monetary challenges. While plastic is inexpensive, easily disposable, and convenient, calabash, on the other hand, are not common in urban areas and are relatively expensive. Also, for hygienic purposes, the calabashes require thorough cleaning before and after use it. using it to save palm wine. So my initial suggestion to resort to the use of calabash was met with resistance from palm wine musicians. For example, one that was told that, hey, Josh, you want us to use calabashes? They're already doing so much for the music. They are composing, rehearsing, because their aim has been to revitalize the music. And I now want to add extra responsibility to them. So and they also emphasize the fact that music is not the only, palm wine music revitalization is not the only thing they are doing. They are engaged in other activities, other jobs. So I should just slow down. This is going to be too much work. So, however, I argue that in the sustainability efforts of Ghanaian palm wine music, it is imperative to prevent the situation in which the environment is degraded at the expense of the music. There's a symbiotic relationship between the music and the natural environment. So despite the associated challenges, I realized that readapting the use of calabash will be a good way to address environmental issues. And second, beside the material, the second thing I realized was the lyrics of palm wine music now and then. And here I'll quote Jeff Titan, who suggests that cultural barriers and applied ethnomusicologists working towards musical sustainability should alienate music from capitalist rationalities, because capitalism and money does not help with sustainability issues. But in the revitalization of palm wine music, the musician and the music is engulfed in monetary realities. And for instance, the medium for disseminating, creating the music, we all know is all money issues. So during my time with the Legon Palm Wine Band last summer, it coincided with the release of their single, which was titled ethno. And ethno in English means tax. And this song was about the issue of e-levy, which was put on it's electronic levy on sending money, mobile money or banking. There was heavy tax on it, so it was a serious issue, and the Legon Palm Wine sang a song about it. So I started questioning, how do economic conditions affect the sustainability of palm wine music, and which is germane to me, the environment? Could economic concerns be the reason these contemporary palm wine musicians are composing songs about taxes and ignoring environmental issues? My effort to identify an original music composition directed to environmental issues by contemporary bands was futile. So this was my intervention. After I went back to the US, prepared my proposal, decided I have to come back and actually put these findings into practice. So I organized an environmentally themed workshop plus palm wine music performances. The workshop was modeled after the palm wine structure in terms of physical arrangement, the organization of the event, the seats were arranged in a circular form with no clear demarcation between the musician and the audience. And this created an inclusive atmosphere. And in each of the workshops and the performances and the festivals, we pour libation using palm wine to acknowledge our ancestors and appreciate Mother Earth for the generous gifts. So I'll show a short video of some of the workshops and performances. Because of tries to escape. So during these performances, ecological issues were the main theme, and they were discussed and they were intermittent, addressed by participants. And this provided an opportunity for engagement. Several people shared their experiences about environmental degradation. One participant from Germany, for instance, shared his experience of flooding in Accra due to clogged gutters. And one participant also explained how a lagoon called a lagoon in Accra, he used to swim in this lagoon, but now it is polluted. To give more meaning to my workshops, I purchased and introduced the use of half-gourd calabashes to serve as a remedy to the use of plastic materials. So this is
what you want to.
How is it?
What you want to.
So in conclusion, while music can serve the cause of environmental rehabilitation, draw attention to critical issues, music can also be a cause of the very ecological degradation it sings against. But as music scholars, I believe that we are well positioned with the communities we work in to protect the natural environment and ensure a future where music and the environment thrive. Music can potentially contribute to human survival in the current global ecological issues we find ourselves. And I like scholars like Professor Olusegun Titus and others who are actively working with use music as a tool for ecological sustainability. I think it is a time for us as music scholars to use our music in ways that can address, permit my bias to address environmental issues. But of course, we can also look at other important issues that we need to address. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Joshua. That's great. Okay, just a moment. Cool. Okay. Okay, I'm back. Thanks, Joshua, for that insightful presentation. So quickly, we are going to move to the third case studies from South Africa. Then following that, we are going to open the three, we are going to juxtapose or put the three cases in perspective, and we can discuss it further. Then our colleagues can also ask questions. Friends and colleagues can ask questions, and we can further unpack this idea and how this case speaks to community music and public-facing work. So, pardon me to put the hat of a presenter on, switching from the host, now switching to a co-presenter. So I'm going to share my screen also quickly to share some of our ongoing works in South Africa in this regard with us. Okay. So what's going on? Okay, 2 seconds. Bam. Okay. So what's going on with this? Okay, we might not. Okay. I think this is what I'm going to do. I'm not sure if this is going to work. Okay, 2 seconds, please. Okay, I think this should work. Okay, this is working. This is working. It's working. Yes, so we are ready. Sorry. Thanks for your patience. Technology is playing the normal game here. Okay, I'm going to share my screen right now. Then we are going to move into the process quickly. Okay, so dear all, so let's start from here. So the title of this particular, this is an ongoing work, and one of the projects with colleagues in South Africa in the last 5 or 6 years now. So this is more like a public-facing work, community music, and community work that we've been doing against the backdrop of post-colonial or post-apartheid South Africa. So by introduction or to create a context for this particular presentation, I